Hello. Hi, everyone. Well, good morning, Running Remote. How are you? Doing good? Welcome to the final day of this conference. This has been wonderful, hasn't it? Well, as he said, I'm Ebony Beckwith, and I'm here to talk about decoding the global workplace from every level, from CEO to intern and everything in between. And I really want this to feel more like a conversation and less like a presentation. I just happen to be the one holding the mic, and I'm pretty sure any one of you could deliver this presentation because this isn't like rocket science. It's nothing heady. We just had Nick give the heady presentation. So I'm gonna offer this once. Would anyone like to deliver this presentation for me? No takers? You just said, can he do it from home? You'd have to go, where do you live? How long would it take you to get home? 12 minutes? 20? That's my time. I have 27 minutes on the clock. So no, unfortunately. But next time we'll coordinate. And do you have fancy shoes? Sorry, okay. Anyone else? Okay, well, let's dive in then. So I want you to imagine this. Imagine you are a VP and you receive an email from your boss. It's the CEO. And it's a calendar invite that says, quick chat. Now, this is kind of how it plays out. There's no context, no content, and you can imagine what's going through this VP's head at this moment. You know, she's thinking, am I getting promoted? Am I getting fired? You know, what's going on? Maybe she's even thinking like, are other people in the organization receiving similar messages like this? There's a swirl of questions going through her mind. Have any of you ever received emails, messages like this? Maybe not from the CEO, but maybe from a peer, maybe from a colleague, a manager, where you're just frustrated because you're missing the context that would be crucial. Context that's like, would be helpful for you to like accept, decline, or just like have the information you need to feel comfortable accepting. Raise your hand. Anything like that familiar? Yeah, we've all had situations like this. We're lacking the context that would be helpful for us to move on. And so, you know, I've had hundreds of interactions like this in my own career. I've heard conversations like this, and you know, from my colleagues. And that's what really prompted me to, you know, think of this conversation, this talk, because of situations similar. And I've been, you know, thinking about this for a long time, and I really want to help people and organizations decode interactions like this in the workplace. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we decode the workplace? So here's what I want to tell you. The old operating system is gone. Gone are the days that you could just walk into any room, the hallway, you know, any walls of the workplace, and just be able to decode the room. Because you could just walk in to a conference room, you could walk into an office, and you could just look. You could see where people sat. You could see who was getting, you could see who spoke first in a meeting. You could see who got interrupted. Maybe you were the person they were looking to get advice. Maybe you were the person who got interrupted. You could see who stayed late, who came on time, how information flowed, who got looped in, who didn't. But that operating system is gone. That was the old operating system. What I want to show you today is that, you know, the cost of these misinterpretations is high, right? Because look, what happens is large enterprises right now are losing $62 million a year to these miscommunications. Right? Employees are struggling. In fact, 89% of remote workers are saying that they don't understand what's going on, right? They're struggling because what's happening is we all know that there's what's said and then there's what's really being said. They're struggling to read in between the lines, right? And then what's happening is managers are lacking the confidence to help people read what's in between the lines. I'll give you a really good example. I did a workshop in January with a nonprofit organization, very small organization, but they had recently gone through some layoffs. And before I do any workshops with organizations, I like to do interviews with employees, just to understand what the managers were telling me is what the employees were actually experiencing. And so in this case, I interviewed employees at all levels. And when it got time for me to interview the management team, I asked them a question. How are you dealing with what's happening with the employees? Do you feel equipped to handle your employee backlash? Because there was a lot of angst within the employees. Anytime you do a reduction in force, anytime there's change, employees feel some kind of way, right? That's fair. And about 70% of the management team, many of whom had been there for 10, 15, 20 years, said that they were struggling and they had lost their confidence. They felt unsure, uncertain. And then when you spoke to employees who'd been there 1 to 5 years, they had no clue how to handle this employee groundswell. And they felt like they had activist employees, and they were like, the employees are, acting unfairly. They're mad and I was like, well, of course they should be. You just laid off their friends, their peers, their colleagues they'd worked with for a long time. So they didn't feel equipped to handle what was going on with their employees. So this is what's happening within our teams right now. So there's a massive leadership gap, and this is the cost of what's going on. And so what I want to tell you is this is not a soft skills issue. It's more than that. This is business critical, right? So it's the difference between teams that deliver versus teams that spiral and churn. It's the difference between clarity and confusion and retention and churn. And I'll tell you, what I see right now is, I'll give you a really good example of this. I recently coached an individual who left a Fortune 500 company. And in the course of our interviews, this wasn't the main reason they left the company, but in the course of my interview, I asked, what was happening with the communication within your team? And one example they gave was that the communication was very blurry. And one example was the difference between optional and mandatory. So all hands meetings, town halls, he got feedback that during his performance review that he was supposed to attend all hands meetings. But they weren't mandatory all hands meetings or mandatory town halls. And his boss said during his review that he didn't attend the meetings. And he countered that, well, no one said that I was supposed to. And so he said, I just didn't feel like it was fair, and it caused him to doubt the team and doubt his manager. He lost trust. And so if someone would have told him, well, this was mandatory and my manager was being tracked on his team's attendance, then he would have gone to the meetings. And so, that was just one of many things that caused him to lose trust. But, this is where we need to just show our teams and tell our teams the truth, right? If optional means optional, if mandatory means mandatory, just say that. But sometimes we're not clear. And I want people to know, be clear. So, this is where I want to share with you. We need to translate chaos into clarity in real time. So, in my over 20 years of leading global teams, what I've learned is that the people who are really good at doing this and decoding this in real time, and the people who get tapped on the shoulders to lead, the people who are the ones who are really good at, or maybe are the ones who are leading big projects, or the ones who get promoted a little bit faster, they're the ones who pick up on these silent cues, the ones who understand that mandatory and optional, they will understand that difference. They are the decoders in the organization. They read in between the lines, they pick up what's said and not said, and they do this in real time. They move a little bit faster, they build trust in the community, and they are sharp. And here's the difference here. I want to share with you like some of the things that I lead. So this is called signal clarity in the cultural coders triangle. So signal clarity, ask yourself these questions. Now, can you identify where decisions happen? Is it Slack? Is it sidebars? Are they strategy calls? Now, in your organization, do you know where decisions happen? I know in some of my organizations, there's the call, and then there's the call within the call. And if you're not getting messaged on Slack, Zoom message, or a text, you are not in the loop. And there's, that may or may not be right, but that's where the action is, because there's, the boss is saying one thing and all the employers are like, there's like all the sidebars going on, right? And it's fast and it's furious and it's going on for the 90 minutes of the entire call, right? And it's active, it's hot. And I know when I'm being looped out, I'm in the doghouse, right? I've been sat aside. And so I want to know what's going on. And so also, who filters decisions before they get to you? I think this is a really important aspect to consider as well, because you may be the person who's filtering the information or you may not. There may be an executive assistant, a chief of staff, a project manager, someone else, but it's important to know where information is getting passed through so that you can be in the loop and receive that information. Again, signal clarity. Cultural translation. This is bridging communication gaps across teams. Sorry for the typo there, that wasn't in the final version. This is bridging communication gaps across teams, geographies, time zones. A really good example of this is a project team that I had. One of my project teams was very frustrated because Team A and Team B were missing, what Team A was missing deadlines. And what happened was we had a global distributed team. Anybody work on a global team? Yeah, okay. A lot of people work on global teams, right? So I decided to join a call. And I listened in, and here's what was happening. Team A would say, we're gonna get this to you by end of day. Okay, you spotted Mark, you're a sharp one. Okay, what do you think was happening, Mark? 100%. And so he said, end of day could be a different time zone. And that's exactly what was happening. And I was like, these people are so smart. It's like my husband, super smart, no idea where his socks are. And so, it's like they could not figure out why they were missing deadlines, right? And so what we implemented was this translation, right? So we said, going forward, we have to say the specific number of time number, 5 p.m., a.m. or p.m., because it means Singapore time is different than London and California, right? And then the time zone. You never missed a deadline again. Imagine if that wasn't internal and if it was external, it was a delivery for a customer. It makes a load of difference. And then lastly, feedback architecture. So you have to be very intentional with this, right? So we scheduled weekly signal sessions. And so that's just making sure we check in. What did this mean? What did you hear? And then micro check-ins for immediate feedback. We're all super busy. And I used to tell my teams, like, I'm paid to be busy, as are you, And so it's okay to just take the time to just check in immediately. What did you mean? Like, can we just check in? And then lastly, which I think is kind of most important, is just onboarding scenarios. And we should be teaching our teams tone. And especially for teams if you have an onboarding document or an onboarding team, if you're a part of an onboarding team, I would love for us to teach the tone and not just tools so that we can help people thrive and not just survive. I feel like so many people are just like kind of doggy paddling and just trying to stay afloat. And we should really help them to really like live and be free in our cultures and not just, almost be sinking. And so here's what I would love. I would love for us all to become cultural decoders within our organizations. And how do we do this? We turn our silence into a signal. And this is what the best of the best do. They are decoding language at every single level. And you do not have to be the CEO and executive to do this. I've seen EAs and interns be really good at reading rooms. Even when there's not a room, we can do this over Zoom, we can do this over Slack. You know, it's the best way for us to do this. You can extract meaning from what's said and unsaid. I can look at body language, you can look at it, and we can see what's going on, even on a call. We can build trust, and we can communicate effectively. And when we do this, we can help build stronger cultures and help build stronger teams. I'm so sorry you did not get this full presentation. There were like 5 more slides that we had to cover, but it's okay. If you would like to stay connected, I can send you the full deck that had way more slides. You have all my contact information here. I would love to stay connected with you. Thank you.